gentlemen, WeatherBrains episode number 908, the weekly show that's all about weather, the oldest running weather podcast in the universe. And we are into June here. This is June, what is this? June 12th, 2023. It's the pre-show. You know what happens here, the magical time of the program where we share boring personal stories, humorous anecdotes, and occasionally we say really outrageous things. Hey, we got two shows this week. We're going to do a Thursday night special. We will not be producing a show next week. We've not missed a week in all these years, going back to January of 2006. And what happens when I am away, which is not that often. I get 3 weeks a year. We do two shows prior to that vacation week. So we'll have two shows this week, and the show we record on Thursday will be out as an audio podcast Monday night of next week. And Bill is back from his month-long bender pub crawl.
Yeah,
man. So, you know, Bill has been on some international pub crawl, boozing it up with some really nasty looking food along the way. I mean,
you
fish eyeballs.
Food. Fish eyeballs. Where was there no fish eyeballs? Had fish eyeballs last night right here in Birmingham.
Oh God! And I got to tell you, I'm excited here. Hang on a second here. I got to show you what's going on here. So last week was a birthday, and the local people here at the station went and got me a Hunt Brothers pizza, and I posted it. So Hunt Brothers Pizza has sent me a box of merchandise here. I mean, I got a Hunt Brothers hat. I got a free Hunt Brothers Pizza card. Got a Hunt Brothers Pizza shirt. I mean, this thing is jam-packed with Hunt Brothers Pizza merchandise. So, see, while you travel the world on the high-class food, I'm at the gas station getting me some Hunt Brothers Pizza, baby. Woo! This is outstanding. I mean, my heart is warm and fuzzy when I got that. So, there you go. Yeah, this I mean, this is a massive box here. This is no small gift. So
I got to get me some Hunt Brothers pizza.
Oh man, oh, it's so good. But no, the ladies, the news anchor ladies, they traveled 9 miles to find a gas station with Hunt Brothers Pizza last week, and brought it back and gave it to me during the 10 o'clock news, and it warmed my heart. You know, where we are at the TV station, they don't have it. You know, Hunt Brothers is typically more kind of in rural areas where they don't have a lot of eateries. And so she traveled 9 miles to find that Hunt Brothers pizza, and it was good. Oh, it was good. Woo, woo. So there you go. So we've got Thursday night, just to be sure we're on the same page here, and that'll be next week's show.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're good to go here. We leave early Saturday morning, and Ryan and I are going to watch a couple of Boston Yankees games at Fenway, which we go every year. It's a tradition. They love us at Fenway. We love Fenway. Sunday night, for the Sunday night game, this is the 18th. This coming Sunday night, we have Green Monster Row 1. Row 1. It'll be the ESPN national game. So look for the Two Stooges on row 1 of the Green Monster, and that'll be us. And then
that sounds like fun.
What's
Have you
weird?
been to the stadium in Miami, James?
No, it's on our list.
I know it's on mine too.
And we're going to go to a random park this year, and I think we're going to go to Francona's place in Cleveland, because I get the idea this might be his last year.
You've never been to the Jake or whatever they call it now?
No. And, you know, he let us in Fenway when he had Boston back in 2010. And that's what started the Boston Red Sox thing with us. And I knew Tito when he was here. You know, he had the Barons back when Michael Jordan played baseball. And he's had some health problems, and I just have a suspicion this might be his last year. So we might go see Tito, Francona in Cleveland, but we've not totally locked it in there. But we've got to go to Phoenix. We've not seen a game in Phoenix, the Diamondbacks. In fact, I have never been in Phoenix other than the airport, which doesn't count. So we need to do that at some point. And what's weird, we've never been to Dodger Stadium. We've been to, Anaheim and San Francisco, but we've never been to Dodger Stadium, which is one of the staples of baseball. So we need to do that at some point.
Grand Domes. Yeah, I've been there twice. I've been to the Angels. I've been to San Francisco. I've not been to Oakland, and I may not make it to Oakland.
No, I don't think it's long for this world. Mitch Moreland played there his last year, and he just he said they won't be there long. But y'all talk
amongst yourselves for a second. I'll be right back.
The White Sox. We need to the local folks here want us to go see the White Sox, so we'll figure it out soon. All right. There's Rick and there's Jen. I think Neil is out. Here comes James A.
The only Major League Baseball games I've ever been to have been because of some weather thing, either at NWA or at the training center in Kansas City. So it's kind of sad.
Well, no. Most people are not baseball people. Most people don't like baseball. They think it's too slow, and that's fine. I mean, everybody's got their own thing, but I just like baseball. It's a thinking man's sport. There's so much mental that goes into it to be successful. And I just, after coaching, we raised boys and coaching, especially the second one. The first one played until he was 12, but the second one kept on going. He was a good little athlete. And I just loved it's like a chess match to me. I didn't necessarily have to have the best athletes. If I had a couple of kids that can get on base and a couple of pitchers that can hit the spots I want, I didn't lose too many games. Now, if you don't give me base runners, I can't help you. And if my pitchers are plunking guys and walking guys, I can't help you. But if you give me a couple of base runners and some pitching, I'm pretty strong. But I can't coach football. I'm the worst I'm the worst football coach in America. It's total train wreck. I don't need to be remotely close to the field in football. I need to be way up in the stands.
Run the wishbone. Run the wishbone.
I coach the UAB. UAB is a school here in Birmingham, University of Alabama, Birmingham. I coached their spring game one year, and it was a train wreck. I thought I'd play this. I said, this is going to be easy. I'm going to play my little mental tricks. And so my first play from scrimmage, the call was a flea flicker. Because I'm thinking I'm going to go for it. These guys will have no clue that I'm going to call the flea flicker on the first play from scrimmage. Well, one of my guys went and told the other team what we were doing. I had a snitch. How does this happen? Gosh, they sniffed. They knew it was coming. I mean, come on, man. And it just went down the tubes from there. Welcome to our television viewers watching on the TV side. It's Monday night. And again, the logistical note for everybody on the TV and everything else. We're going to be doing two shows. And on television, we're going to run the show next Monday at the regular scheduled time. We're going to produce it live Thursday night of this week, and it will be on YouTube live. And that'll be our show for next week. And then I'll be spending some time goofing off. Everybody needs a mental health break. So Bill is back from his 3-month-long bender. Bill, are we okay to start here?
Yeah, we don't have a guest, James, which is kind of strange because we confirmed all this very clearly. So I don't know. So maybe a homegrown show here at the last second.
Hey, man, we roll with the flow here. That's what we do.
I'll reach out here in just a second.
All right.
So you were saying, James? Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No. We're rolling here. The recorders are going. Here we go. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hey, could y'all hear that music? Let me play the chemtrails thing. Hang on. Let's see. Could you hear the foghorn?
Kind of sounded fed back.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to sound funky. I know it's going to sound weird, but if you can hear anything, I just wanted you guys to hear the audio segments once we get there. Maybe
it's been a little bit lower lately. It seems like last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I need to get in there and look at that. But we'll do that later. All right. Here we go in JP. Sorry. Here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. WeatherBrains, episode number 908. This is the weekly show that's all about weather. You know, we might not be the best show, but we're the longest running weather podcast in the universe since January of 06, and we're still here. Who'd have thunk it? And so Bill Murray is back. We'll talk with Bill here in just a second. And Rick Smith, good to have you back. I missed you last week. How you doing?
Doing good. Hated to miss last week. I guess she talked to the twins from Guam, and I haven't got a chance to listen to that show yet, but I know it had to be awesome. So hated to miss that.
Yeah, it was good. That was a fun show. Those guys were great. Troy, your buddies. I thought they were personable. They were relaxed. They seemed comfortable doing it, because a lot of times, this is hard. I mean, especially they were at some remote. They were not in their office. They were at a hotel.
Well, they were actually at the Hilton, Bill, there in Guam, where I was. They did that since we did that in the show 1 year before that, and we were on the balcony of the Guam Hilton Spa and Resort, and they had friends that were there because their homes were damaged by the typhoon, and so they took over their deck.
Well, that was a great show. That was a lot of fun. Let's see. Dr. James Adelot is on the line from Tulsa, Oklahoma. News is over. So, how was your newscast this evening? And before I even say anything, I have no idea what our lead story was here either. People don't understand. It's like people think weather folks, we sit around, we play video games, we pick our nose, we talk bad about our country. But we're actually busy. We don't have this staff like they have in the news department. We have to do the graphics. We have to answer a gazillion social media messages. So I totally understand if you don't know what the lead story was.
I think somebody got stabby. I don't know for sure. Something was going on.
That's a show title.
Yeah,
somebody got
like that one.
Somebody got stabby. Wow. All right. And Jen, welcome. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. I'm great. We got over an inch of rain yesterday. It was awesome. We needed it. We had actually gotten bumped up into the D1 drought, and so it came just in time. And today we stayed in the 60s all day. So I've got the long sleeves back out, but I walked out of church yesterday and it was just a light shower, and people were running. I'm like, I'm not running. I've just absorbed it. It was awesome. I loved it. So
yeah, you got that big old upper low just spinning away on top of you up there. It's it's a different pattern here. We've really not had a lot of heat problems down here so far. And we've got a fairly strong mid-level flow. It's kind of bringing these thunderstorm pools in here from time to time. We have one as I'm doing the show down in South Alabama, but look who's back. Bill Murray. He's been on a month-long bender overseas, the overseas pub crawl. Wow. Yeah. He's been 2 months, 3 months?
I think 3 weeks, but 2 weeks of business travel and then 10 days in Germany on family vacation, which was extremely incredible. Good. I look at some of these tours, when they plan these, group tours out and they go to like one place a day, and we were going to like 12 places a day. So everybody's tongue was hanging out by the end of the trip, and they came home needing a vacation. So I felt like I had done my job well. But we went from Munich. We stayed several days in Munich, went down to Salzburg, Austria for a couple of days. That was a lot of fun. We rode trains everywhere we went. We went up to Berlin. And we're just amazed. Got to use a little bit of our studies in German, because our kids had taken German in high school, and we ate a lot of great food that James made fun of earlier during the pre-show. But the food was truly outstanding, way better than I would have ever imagined. We went to the highest peak in Germany, all the fancy castles. We kind of did it all, and ready to go back again.
So no. The pictures, some looked okay, but there was one you sent. It looked like some rotten fish that had been sitting on some guy's plate for 5 years with oozing crap coming out of the eyeballs. I mean, I'm thinking, who I I remember that we used to do this thing called backyard weather, where every summer I have to go to somebody's backyard for a cookout, as a sponsored thing. And some guy cooked out fish with the eyeballs in the same thing, green ooze, and there were green flies all around the fish. And were there green flies around that rotten fish that you were eating over there?
No, apparently that beer garden, which is one of the most famous in Munich, that's one of the things they do. And I don't know if it's at other beer gardens or not. I didn't run into it anywhere, but it's called steckerl fish, and it's just on a stick, and they just roast it right there. And it actually was really good. It didn't it didn't win the award for the most photogenic fish of the year. That was for sure. And it was leaking a lot of stuff, James. I got some on my khakis that night,
God.
dragging it back to the table. But I did nominate it.
I'd rather go to the Chitlin Festival. Bill, you ever been to the Chitlin Festival up in Arley?
Man.
No, I have not done that. But we did go to Automatic last night, James. It's one of the great seafood restaurants here in Birmingham, and had a whole flounder. And the guy warned me before I got it. He's like, this thing's gonna have an eyeball staring right at you, right? Yeah, bring it on. And
since you're into this weird stuff, you need to go to the Chitlin Festival. Have you ever had chitterlings before?
No, I have not had chitterlings.
Well,
I don't know how I've done that as a Southerner. I've had just about everything else you can have. But
since you like these exotic foods, you should go to Meek High School in Arley, Alabama, to the annual Chitlin Festival.
If you invite me, I'll go with you, James.
I did the weather up there once, and it was a regret. I mean, these people were some of these people that were sucking those things down like M&Ms. I mean, gosh.
Now what would you liken them to? Because I'm not a fan of tripe, James, which I've had a couple of times, and I've never really cared for.
Well, it's
more like that, or is it more crispy? What's the texture here?
I didn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. I just they were cooking them in these big
show
vats. Yeah. they were cooking them in these big vats, and it was just really bad. Again, there were green flies, and I don't eat anything where green flies are involved. It's just that's a sign. That's a sign that humans do not need to be consuming this, and yet it was just like a cotton candy festival. I mean, I don't know. I mean, so
I think there's a perspective change needed. I think you're thinking of them as flies. They're actually bonus protein.
Oh gosh. So Bill, are we gonna do a homegrown show? You want to do one here?
I'm afraid so, James. I don't know how this is. Our guest tonight, Douglas Pearman, who is a METOC officer, commanding officer of Naval Information in the Warfare Training Group in Gulfport, is probably something's come up tonight. But we'll have to see what happened there. But couldn't reach him. We were all confirmed, so I hope everything's okay. But anyway,
Bill would let you know the first tornado warning of North Texas has just come out.
I see that. I saw that.
And severe thunderstorm capable of producing a tornado on Monday evening, the 12th of June, near Melvin, Texas. And the cell is moving southeast at 25. So Austin, they want to keep an eye on that one.
Moving toward Brady, Hard 8 barbecue.
Right.
Yeah. That thing looks nasty.
Troy, y'all got an NCAA baseball tournament game tonight, don't you?
Now
is it
that
in
you
Austin, or is it in
I
Stanford?
I don't
I think
know.
this
No,
may be
it's
our
at Stanford.
guest.
It's at Stanford. I think
It's in Stanford.
Yeah. But we got to 95 at Bergstrom today, and 97, I guess, or 98 at Camp Mabry. So plenty of warmth. And the Storm Prediction Center said the tornado watch out in that area of Central Texas for the last 3 or 4 hours. So.
Yeah. Now you said North Texas. I was thinking Dallas, Fort Worth. It's
more
like the hill country.
Yeah. San Angelo CWA right now. And it may be moving a little bit southeast. We'll kind of watch that. There we go. Yeah. There's Melbourne. So.
Yeah, that's just pretty nasty looking here. Let's look at the other side of this thing. Is there a tornado watching? Oh yeah. Is there a tornado watching effect over there?
Tornado watch came out mid-afternoon from SPC. Yeah.
Okay.
I could be nerdy and point out I think there's a lot of side lobe contamination in that inflow.
You know,
S-
I'm wondering,
somebody-
the locations are not quite the same, are they? Or
yeah, looks side lobish.
yeah, I agree with OK James on that one.
So what's the deal on talking about college baseball? Have you got a game tonight, Troy? A regional game there?
I think that's up in Stanford. So
Oh, okay. Because
That's good. Bunch of baseball size hail could get really confusing.
they've been trying to play a game in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. I know it's Southern Miss and I think Tennessee.
Yeah.
The College World Series starts like this weekend,
Yeah.
so these things are wrapping up. But they've had some problems with thunderstorms over there.
Well, also up in Nashville overnight, I was a country music award, not awards, but big festival they were having in Nashville over the weekend. Had to evacuate. In fact, I think Saturday was a wash, wasn't it? Didn't I see a tweet or something that they canceled pretty much everything in the country music festival or whatever it was in Nashville?
Yeah, the CMA Fest.
Yeah.
So let's do a review of the tornado season so far. Rick Smith, give us some thoughts on your experiences now that we're in mid-June and then we'll go to James A. Well, let's go spend a few minutes and Kim's here. Let's do a tornado season review.
Well, it was an unusual one. In Oklahoma, at least, we started off December, January, and February, all setting records for the most tornadoes recorded in those 3 months. And of course, and the majority of the tornadoes this year happened in our CWA. I don't think Tulsa had many, if any, maybe count them on one hand. But February 26th was a big tornado day around here. The tornado less than half a mile from the National Weather Center. March was kind of quiet, and then April got busy again. April 19th was a big tornado day around here. And if you look at a map of all the tornado tracks around in Oklahoma, pretty much the state, almost all of them are clustered just south of the Oklahoma City metro area. So from Grady County to McLean County, Cleveland County, Pottawatomie County, that's been the hotbed. So people that, some will say, well, the tornado season wasn't that busy unless you live in Cole, Dibble, Washington, Slaughterville, places like that. They will say it was the worst year ever because just multiple tornadoes. Didn't have any EF4, EF5 tornadoes again this year. In fact, I think statistic I saw from the SPC is we didn't have forgot how many years in a row this is. We haven't had an EF4 tornado in the month of May. So certainly that holds true for Oklahoma. Then the next big day in Oklahoma, tornado-wise, was May 11th. We had several tornadoes again just south of in that same general area where we were talking about earlier. And May was quiet. I mean, we're sitting around the normal average number of tornadoes for year to date in the state, but a lot of that is because of what happened in February, where we set a record number, and a lot that we had in April. May was really lower than average as far as pure numbers go.
Yeah, I just I see a lot of people, these chasers, griping about the lack of activity. Seemed like you talked about, Rick. You kind of toss out May. It was very busy. James A., what are your thoughts on the season?
We look back to see, and it's been very quiet on my side of the state, and this TV market over here, not the case. I mean, it was a sharp drop off from Rick's CWA into ours, which mirror the TV markets pretty closely. The last time we did continuous coverage for a tornado warning in my DMA was February 26th, I think.
Wow.
Ooh, that's weird.
I mean, knock on every piece of wood I can find around here.
We kind of had the same thing down here in the southern United States, in that we had a very busy January, February, and it just kind of slowed as you get into March and April, which typically are the two bigger months. And May was just quiet as could be down here. So it's kind of the same thing here. I don't have the exact date, but I don't know if I remember how to do long form tornado coverage. It's been so long. And typically when you come out of May, we've done so much of it. We're just tired of it. We're ready for a break. But yeah. So, and again, here, now we shift to the tropics, but let's go to Kim, who's joining us. Kim, how are you?
Doing great. Sorry that I was a little bit late, but the kiddo was resisting the bedtime. So yeah, I did the best I could.
So we're kind of giving our thoughts on the tornado season. So what are your thoughts on this? Here comes our guest. Before we bring him in, what are your thoughts, Kim, on the tornado season 2023?
Man, it has been an interesting one, hasn't it? When you have so much activity early in the year, you really don't know what that's going to portend for spring. And I think a lot of us were kind of worried about what it would mean for, May and into June. Now, there has been a lot of activity in parts of Texas, and it's been a really active severe weather May in the Texas Panhandle and now South Central Texas, and even down to the Rio Grande. They had some confirmed tornadoes that crossed the river into Mexico. So it really just depends on where you are. Things are a little bit displaced from what we're used to seeing in your average May, but things like this can happen. We have one of those springs here where we're getting more of the northwesterly flow and days upon days of more gentle rain. And personally, these are my favorite springs. So I've been loving this. It's been great.
We had a fire on our fireplace last night outside. I couldn't believe it. Mosquito
What?
are on, and we had a fire going. Yeah.
What? Wow. Well, Bill Murray, I think our guest is on the line here. So I'll turn it back over to you and let's bring him in.
Yeah, James, he's had a little excitement in his neighborhood tonight down on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. Our guest WeatherBrain tonight is a METOC officer, commanding officer of Naval Information Warfare Training Group Gulfport, Commander Doug Pearman. Welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you doing today?
Well, we're really honored to have you here. Thank you for your service. Thanks to Bobby Dixon, public affairs officer, for helping put this together. But the storms have wreaked a little havoc in your neighborhood right there in near Stennis, huh?
Yeah, they have. We had some severe weather come through just a little while ago, and the nice little warning said 80 miles per hour of wind. I don't know that we got quite that high, but it gave the trees a run for their money out here by where I live.
Well, we hear it knocked a tree down on one of your neighbors' homes and has displaced them temporarily. So we're grateful that you could join us tonight at all. And feel free if you need to leave or need to go early. We can make that happen. But we're honored to have you here tonight.
Well, thanks. I appreciate the opportunity. Just one fast correction. I think we set this up some time ago, but I'm no longer the CO of IWTG. I've turned that over to Colleen Purley, and I've moved on over to the Commander Naval Meteorology and Oceanography Command as their requirements and capabilities officer.
Now you're going to have to make some sense for us of all these ranks and positions and things in just a minute, Commander. I want to welcome Bobby Dixon, who's joining us too. Bobby's worked really hard to make this show happen, and I was going to be so disappointed if we couldn't get it on the air tonight. But Bobby, thank you for everything you've done to make this occur. And you're a lieutenant commander there, and are you still the public affairs officer for METOC?
Yes, sir. I'm still the public affairs officer for the next 2.5 weeks, and then I moved my family to Stuttgart, Germany, to be the U.S. AFRICOM PAO, or not the PAO, but one of the PAOs there at the command.
Wow, that's fantastic. We just got back from Germany and had such a fun trip. What a beautiful country. And we had a great time over there. Have you served over there before? Have you been based in Germany at some other point in your career?
I've been stationed in Naples, Italy for 3 years, and went there with young kids and came back with no longer toddlers. Definitely now they're, well, when we left, they were 8, 6, and 4. So it's been a great career as a public affairs officer. It's been awesome to tell the naval meteorology and oceanography story, and to talk about our 2,900 sailors, scientists, engineers who do work all over the world to keep our fleet safe. And I'm so happy that Commander Pearman is here to help kind of talk to you guys more on a technical level, as I am not a scientist and you guys all are. And so I'm just going to shut up now and let you guys carry on.
Well, we're glad you jumped in too, Bobby. Thank you for being here. So Commander Pearman, talk for a minute about METOC, what that means. Separate that out for us first. You're muted.
It's meteorology and oceanography. We kind of roll in for our community. We use METOC to encompass everything that we do. So it may be a little bit of an over generalization or an oversimplification, depending upon how you look at it.
But there's a ton of disciplines in what you do, aren't there?
There are.
I mean, I can't even imagine, but go through some of the more important ones.
Okay, I'll walk around. I'll sort of walk around the horn. We have the U.S. Naval Observatory, and if you've ever dialed up to get the current time, that's part of our responsibility is precise time and positioning of the Earth's orientation, as well as the celestial bodies, for purposes of navigation, timing, and astrometry. So what that boils down to essentially is we have at that particular command scientists that range from physicists that study most recently calcium lasers in order to slow down atomic motion to the point that they can measure it and get down to picosecond accuracy and timing. In the same building, they also have astrophysicists that study black holes, and it's one of our exciting, more unique commands in Washington, D.C., station co-located with the Vice President of the United States on the same compound. So that's one of the far ends of the spectrum that we have. And then we have at the other side, I guess I should have started at the seabed instead of in space, but we have the Naval Oceanographic Office down here at Stennis Space Center. And the Naval Oceanographic Office does everything from collect bathymetric and hydrographic data. The difference being one is navigation quality in accordance with the International Hydrographic Office standards, which is hydrography, and then bathymetry, which is just bottom topography. I shouldn't say just, because it's equally complex when it comes to collection. And then they also do the sensing for physical oceanography and acoustics. So it's a big ocean, and we do it with 7 tag ships and a number of autonomous vehicles, floats, and various other sensors, including space-based. Then we also have the Fleet Numerical Meteorology and Oceanography Center. Those are our 3 data centers, by the way. Fleet Numerical is responsible for the supercomputing that goes into the NavGem model, the coupled models that we use for higher resolution areas to include our coupled tropical cyclone modeling. And they take in, observation-wise, they take in millions of observations a day. They run the global model every 2 hours in order to make sure that we have a continuous data assimilation schema running. And then that kicks off every 6 hours for the full-blown model run that we make public, as well as providing the boundary conditions for the high-resolution COAMPS model that you can see publicly facing as well. They feed the sensing, analysis, and prediction that goes into the forecasting that takes place at the Fleet Weather Centers in Norfolk and San Diego, as well as the Naval Oceanography Operations Center that manages the electromagnetic and acoustic prediction, or forecasts, if you will, for the fleet. Those are our big commands.
Wow, that's pretty amazing right there. And is that number that Bobby threw out there, 2,900 men and women, is that the entire force, or is that expanded beyond just the METOC group?
No, that's the entire force of meteorology and oceanography. It's a mix of military and civilian, ranging from high school graduates to multiple doctorates.
Wow. So let's go back to your background, because we always like to know if our weather folks had an interest at an early age, or was it something that you picked up later? Were you always interested in weather?
I was always interested in weather. I grew up in Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. So I still have, there. Oh yes, I still remember driving out in the panhandle of Oklahoma and looking out the window and seeing 3 tornadoes in a field. Of course, we've come a long ways in safety since then, and we now know that was a bad idea. But yes, I enlisted in the Navy, and during boot camp, I was introduced to the AG rating and kind of fell in love with it.
yeah, James A is our punny member of the panel here, and he threw out that you saw him right outside the window. They were 40 miles away, probably, since you have such good visibility out there. I don't want to give away James's pick, but yeah, so I'll be quiet because James Adelot has a great pick tonight, and I'll be quiet for everybody to enjoy that. So talk about how you got into this side of it in the military. And then I want to talk about some of our younger people who have an opportunity, if they're interested in weather, what are the chances for them in naval meteorology? So let's talk about that for a few minutes.
Okay. Well, my career track, I enlisted in the Navy, and so I came in as an E1 in boot camp, and was promoted out of there, and was able to go straight to the aerographer's mate A school, where they teach the art of observing and analysis. So basically going outside and taking the weather observations, similar to what you do still at airfields for aviation purposes. And I went to what's now Fleet Weather Center, Norfolk, for my first command. And from there, that was learning getting exposure to forecasting, if you will, at that command. And then went over to the aviation center, where I got exposed to the rapid pace of forecasting for aviation and the observing problem set. And then went to our forecasting school, which is 7 months long. And that's 7 months, 8 hours a day. It's pretty intensive school. Starts off with basic physics, takes you through dynamics, and then the application of learning how the numerical models work, and how to apply what you see in those numerical models to warfighting problems. Then it's out to the fleet.
So how would you compare that 7 months of intense training to your bachelor's or graduate degrees, Commander?
I think the best way to describe it is imagine learning a lot of thumb rules and how to identify certain characteristics in a satellite image, like an S curve, if you will, and recognizing that that's a potential developing low pressure system. Without all of the dynamics behind it and the math that goes with it. So when I went to graduate school, for me, it was probably more fascinating than my fellow students that were in there, because I was learning all the why behind all of the things that I'd learned in C school, in our forecasting school. So things like 500 millibar, the upper level troughs moving at 50% of the 500 millibar winds. Finally learning the math as to why that is, why jet streams are unstable, instead of just knowing the convergent, divergent quadrants across the jet stream. Understanding the math that goes into the strangeness that the enemy of geostrophy is geostrophy. And so there was a lot of excitement in learning all of the why behind the thumb rules that I'd learned in forecasting.
Talk about all the LDOs and CWOs and all those terms that are unusual to me. I don't understand how they work, and how does that promotion track work for an officer going up, and what's the importance of those roles?
So for a limited duty officer, that's the LDO. That means that when you commission, you stay in the job that you were in before as an enlisted person. So you get to take that experience and knowledge with you in my case, it was from the chief's mess and into the wardroom. Chief warrant officers are now replacing those limited duty officers in our community. We've closed down our limited duty officer opportunity and shifted full focus into the chief warrant officer, and with really good reason. A lot of our limited duty officers wound up taking what we call the on-ramp into the regular 1800 meteorology community and then go to grad school and have the opportunity to promote and compete for captain, continue to promote as the Navy sees fit. That takes you a little bit away from your specialization. You get to stay specialized in that you're still in the same community, but you work in more of like my role right now is capabilities and requirements. So I'm removed a little bit from that actual problem set, in that I now deliver the capability to the fleet. Whereas a warrant officer, maintains that special attachment to the to executing the mission. So they're still doing the forecasting day in and day out. They're still doing the how does the weather affect electromagnetic propagation. So that's sort of why we've moved towards a warrant officer commissioning program for our enlisted force.
That makes sense. So, you mentioned that, you're making forecasts all over the globe. I think a lot of our fans probably don't understand that the branches of the the branches of the armed forces do that. And all those assets, incredible assets that we have all over the world, and the men and women that are serving are only as good as the various support elements. And a big part of that is weather. Talk about some examples of how that's really, really important out there, around the globe in different theaters.
I think you hit it you sort of hit it in different places. So in the planning process globally, it's understanding the environment in such a way, and oftentimes you're working on climatology scales that take you outside of the normal forecasting range. And sometimes you're challenging that, where if you're just looking at a plan that's in the next 30 days, where you're really starting to leave climatology and work your way into probability space using ensemble prediction systems, all the way down to the 0 to 5 day forecasts, where you're affecting ops in the tactical world. So the complexity of it is when you're forecasting for one location for a long period of time, you sort of get to a place to where you can recognize weather regimes and how it's going to behave in your region. Our sailors are on ships going through a moving world. So you're adding another inertial reference frame, if you will, to the problem set. And so oftentimes they'll find themselves forecasting in an area they've never been, with no forecasting handbook or guide from local experts. So they really have to develop their skills quickly going from region to region. And the places where those things are the most critical are when you are keeping your sea lines of communication open. So your ability to forecast not only for where you are, but where you're intending to go in 0 to 10 days, if you will. It's a challenging job. It's humbling because oftentimes your forecast is going to bust, not necessarily because you were wrong, but because you were right and they didn't go where you were intending to go. So that part of the problem is challenging as well.
So how do you do that with the younger forecasters, the less experienced ones? Do you have to overlay them with more experienced forecasters until they're all up to the same speed, or how does that work?
You do. We have strike group oceanography teams in Norfolk and San Diego, and then the Anti-Submarine Warfare Center out in Yokosuka. And the way they build out their teams is they'll have a chief who will be the most experienced forecaster on the team. Usually they'll have they'll have a leading petty officer who will be the next most experienced forecaster. And then they'll have 2 additional forecasters that all focus on the aviation weather problem, because most of the time they're dealing with a moving airfield in an aircraft carrier or a big deck amphib. So they're launching and recovering airplanes. You add another forecaster to that whose responsibility is strike warfare in order to forecast for off the ship wherever those aircraft are going, and another one for doing the anti-submarine warfare problem set, which is forecasting for below the ocean surface. So you have a range of skills in there, and I'll quote Captain Hermsdorfer, who recently said you start off with depth, and then you grow your breadth through time. So typically, what happens is you identify your team, and you find out what their desire is, where's their passion, and you build out that depth with the passion that each one of those sailors have, and then you capitalize on that to cross-train them. So it's each one of the teams develops its own personality, if you will, and it's all really dependent on that chief. The ability of that chief to influence the team to learn new things and move outside of their comfort zone is really what defines the success or limited success of a given team.
Is it a very competitive situation? Is there a lot of debate within the forecasting center when a critical mission is ongoing?
Yes, it's a normal forecasting situation. I think that everybody on this line can probably appreciate, where we all look at the exact same forecast scenario and come up with slightly different solutions. So typically, what winds up happening is you arrive at what the final conclusion is going to be in the office, and the rest of the debate stays in the office, and one answer leaves it, and that eliminates any confusion and problems throughout the ship. As like on an aircraft carrier, you may be providing a strike forecast or a launch and recovery forecast to the carrier air group pilots. Then another one of your forecasters is briefing the surface combatant commander or the air defense commander, who all have different responsibilities, and they're looking at the forecast for a different reason. But you want the same forecast to influence that decision. So yeah, it's very important for them to be able to get their punches in the office and get it out of their system, so they walk out all on the same page.
Now we just had the anniversary of D-Day, and of course that was one of the most important weather forecasts in history. Have you studied that forecast and that process extensively, and is that something that's talked about in the military training?
It is. We actually cover all of them. Well, not all of them. The major ones that were influential weather-wise. I had the pleasure of briefing Walter Monk, and nothing like being an oceanographer in your PhD program and briefing Walter Monk on nonlinearity and ocean waves. But he actually stopped and interrupted the brief and talked for a little while about the ocean wave forecast that were so critical in that era. And he also expressed his shock that we still use significant wave height as a forecast parameter, but that's a separate story for a different time.
James, Bobby's got a graphic that I think he can help show here to show just the complexity and scope of the mission, if you'll allow him to screen share. And
He's
then
good.
maybe Commander can talk about all this. It probably will make a lot more sense than my rambling questions.
Okay.
So, Bobby, if you want to screen share, we'll let the Commander talk through it.
Okay, 1 second.
And for our listeners that are on the audio podcast, we'll try to describe what we're seeing here. And James Adelot wants to talk about something else I wanted to get into, so I'll let James bring that up in a second after we go through this graphic here.
If y'all will forgive me. Oh, there it is. It's the big green button. All right, 1 second.
There we go. All right, so we've got a graphic of the globe here. Commander, take us through it.
Okay. The white ships that you see on there are representative of our survey vessels, and they're out there with typically a ship will have a contingent of 10 to 15 people on it, depending upon what mission they're executing. And so they do 30-day stints. So they're underway for 30 days, and then they'll go back home, and another team will relieve them. So a given ship may have an allotment of 70 civilian sailors, and they rotate through in order to keep that ship at sea nearly continuously. Let's see, what else do we have on here? We have gliders, the ocean gliders. So we have over 100 ocean gliders. At any given time, we may have anywhere from small numbers up to 100. The most we've had in the water at a given time is 110. Ocean gliders basically they utilize their buoyancy to move through the water column and take vertical profiles of the ocean water column, and those feed back into our numerical models. And we have those all over the world. The beauty of those is we can drive them. So if there's an area where you have a density difference that makes it challenging for you to use other types of profiling capabilities, we utilize those ocean gliders. See, what else do you have on there, Bobby?
Why is that density important, Commander? How does that affect the theater?
Okay, so the understanding the vertical profile of the water column, specifically the density profile, is important for acoustics. Not only so acoustics mainly. That's the primary concern. Is you want to know how sound propagates through the water column. But the secondary concern is how that's going to affect buoyancy of given assets that are moving underwater.
Very cool. So that's important in detection of other threats and things like that.
Yes,
with
it
the
is. And then it
acoustics?
also feeds back into our numerical models.
So now you've got 100 of those at a time, maybe at a peak time. How many observations are they spitting out per hour or per day?
Oh wow! I don't have the solid numbers on that. I know you assume a dive. They report they do a dive and then they come back up and report, and that so probably 2 or 3 observations a day per glider.
So I know if we had Dr. Neal on with us tonight, he would be digging into all this data assimilation. That's a tremendous amount of data that you're having to input into your models, right?
It is. The data assimilation problem set is large, and it varies because for some of our numerical modeling purposes we're utilizing a 3D VAR schema, and then for some we've moved into a 4D VAR realm. So as we look at what do you transition to the cloud and what do you keep on premises, we wrestle with the volume of data. Our typical numerical modeling problem set for across the globe produces right now we produce about 8 terabytes of data a day. When our next model comes online, when we have a fully coupled system with ESPC version 2, when we integrate Neptune, which is a non-hydrostatic atmospheric model, with our new global ocean forecast system, we'll be producing more than 12 terabytes a day, and then disseminating that. So as we wrestle with where do you put it in the cloud or on premises from a supercomputing and storage perspective, the data assimilation is part of it, and then also the data dissemination is part of it.
Now you've got sensors shown on the map there in the Arctic and Antarctic for ice. Talk about the importance of that, and as those sea lanes become more navigable, what sort of challenges does that present to the Navy?
That's very challenging, and that's an international problem that I shouldn't call it a problem. It's an international opportunity. We're part of a partnership where we put ice buoys out in the Arctic, and we try to keep a couple of hundred of them out there, and between us and our international partners, and what that does is gives us the ability to sense the behavior of the ice flow, if you will, and get a better idea of how this behaves. We have to continuously reseed that for various reasons. It's a harsh environment, so sometimes the buoys get destroyed, and sometimes they just get ejected. So that particular problem set is one we have the Naval Ice Center, which also is dual-hatted as the National Ice Center. But that particular command works with NOAA quite a bit in that they're even on the same network, and they work with both the Antarctic and the Arctic problem set.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. And now we're going into the tropical season in the Atlantic, and uncertain about what it's going to look like. It could be busy based on sea surface temperatures. It could be hindered at some point by El Nino. Talk about the impact of tropical systems on the Navy.
Tropicals are so from an Atlantic perspective, tropicals are very challenging because that's where our Atlantic fleet is located, is on the recurve part of this problem. So we have the Fleet Weather Center in Norfolk, and because we're so concerned about this, we actually have a civilian who's a Navy civilian that's part of the National Hurricane Center as a forecaster on their watch, Mr. Dave Roberts. And we are heavily involved in those discussions. So when you have the tropical phone calls, we're part of it, both at Fleet Weather Center and with Mr. Dave Roberts. That problem is the problem with moving a fleet out of a port is non-trivial. You're talking millions of dollars and people. When you sortie that fleet out ahead of a tropical cyclone coming in, those sailors are leaving their families to manage getting out of harm's way while they take their ships to sea. So that particular problem is one that's working its way into probability space as well, as you have a long and a cross track error that you try to account for as you make the best recommendation you can at 4 and 5 days out, which is what it takes to get the ships out away from a tropical cyclone. Similar problem in the Pacific out at NOAC Cusco, where the Joint Typhoon Warning Center is the actual forecast center for the Pacific for our Navy assets.
James, did you want to ask your question about some historical typhoons?
Yeah, I've got a couple other questions that kind of came to mind too. When you're deployed out to the fleet, I assume, you talk about a lot of aviation operations. Are you deployed onto an aircraft carrier? Is in like one per carrier battle group, one unit, or how does that work? And the next question, historically, when you brought up typhoons, I always think of Halsey's typhoon in 1944 with Task Force 38, which was just horribly tragic.
Okay, let me hit the question of where are our sailors first. So a strike group oceanography team, which is, like I said, about 13 to 15 people, will be on board an aircraft carrier. And our concept of operations will also push sailors to smaller ships as required for distributed maritime operations. And that depends upon the mission of the individual ship and how far away from the aircraft carrier they're going. If they're going for independent ops, we're probably going to have somebody on there. The aircraft carriers specifically have the largest contingent just because it's the most dynamic mission set, and that's where most of your planning and decision cycle takes place with the admiral that's on board the aircraft carrier.
Can I ask a quick follow-up on that? I know in civil aviation, a lot has been done with crew resource management, that anybody can tell anyone else what their concerns are, mainly with safety of a flight. Is that the same way when you're dealing with the chief, that everybody on the team has the ability to bring something up, or does rank come into play there? How is the dynamic of that interpersonal relationship when you're discussing what could be some detrimental weather?
Yeah, rank doesn't really get in the way of safety. That's one place where we default to, all right, what's the real hazard here? You notify the hazard and then you work your way out of it. Where that comes into play most of the time for us is in thunderstorm conditions. So you don't have lightning detection systems out there. If you're radiating, then you can kind of see the echo returns of the clouds in the radar scope. But for the most part, you're using a satellite image. You're looking at the ocean waves to see what's happening with if you have a wind direction change, or if you have a swell coming towards you and you're like, okay, well, something's got to be producing that. But from a safety of flight perspective, lightning is typically our biggest problem. And where that goes into play is we make recommendations for setting thunderstorm conditions 1 and 2, and then the commanding officer sets them. And that's a nice separation of church and state, if you will, because it allows us the ability to make the recommendation and then get back to the problem of trying to figure out where to take the ship to get it out of the problem that you're in. Now, the Halsey question.
Yeah.
We're better at this than we used to be. What's interesting here is when you talk about if you had to try to make the same move that Halsey was making in an environment where you had no communication and all you had available to you were those sailors that specialize in the weather, would they be able to solve this problem in a way that wouldn't have put the ships at risk? And I would argue now, yes, because we're in a place where these commanders are used to listening to these AGs and taking heed in what they say. It's especially if it's helping them take the ship out of harm's way from a weather perspective. So I think we're better than we were then. And I also think that we've just through time, the relationship between the meteorology department and the ship's command, the admiral and the ship's CO is much tighter than maybe it was back then. Now, there's always a risk management problem in that if the admiral has to get the ship someplace, then he or she have to make that decision on how much risk tolerance they're willing to take.
And I don't think Admiral Halsey earned his nickname of Bull for no reason.
No, I don't think his risk tolerance would have been difficult to justify in today's Navy.
So while we've got the infographic up here, Commander Pierman, anything else you want to make sure we point out before we take that down?
Let's see. We've got the observatory. Now I think I've hit all of our commands, Bobby. Are you thinking? Have I missed anybody here?
I think the biggest one that we've had in the news recently is the Joint Typhoon Warning Center and what they've been working on tracking the typhoons in the Pacific and the Indian Ocean. Commander Pierman, if you can talk a little bit more about what the Joint Typhoon Warning Center has done and the work that they do and how it has prepared the fleet, but not just the Navy, the work that the JTWC does out of Honolulu, Hawaii, also helps our allies and partners in the area prepare for storms. So I don't know if you want to chat a little bit more about that.
So the Joint Typhoon Warning Center is kind of a gem. It's very small, which is great because that means they're agile. And but so out there you have the unusual opportunity of coupling with NOAA and also our international partners in the region in order to make sure that we're all communicating for tropical cyclones. In this particular case, what Bobby may be referring to is they're the forecasting hub. Even though the actual resource protection mission lies in Yokosuka, Japan, the forecasting mission lies in Hawaii. And at that command, when I say we're teamed up with NOAA, we all use I'm going to forget the acronym. Are you familiar with ATCF?
Mm-hmm.
So they're using the same decks for tropical cyclone forecasting that the National Hurricane Center is using and that we share with Japan. And so those forecasts, those independent forecast centers don't necessarily come to agreement. As you guys well know, the Joint Typhoon Warning Center has scientists on watch 24/7, and they have a certain training and qualification pipeline plus their degreed meteorologists. And oftentimes you'll see a difference in their forecast, especially in the 72 to 120 hour range from the regional partners over there, which is fine. Everybody's forecast differs slightly, but from our perspective, we make sure that our forecast is the official one. Because this is also a data management problem for us, and making sure that it's the authoritative source of information for decision superiority in the fleet resides with Naval Meteorology and Oceanography. And in the entire Pacific Fleet for tropical cyclones, it's Joint Typhoon Warning Center. They're co-located. I say co-located. They're just slightly about halfway up the hill, the Makalapa compound from the commander of the Pacific Fleet and the Pacific Command. So both the combatant commander and the senior naval officer for the fleet, which is nice because it makes it relatively quick for them to be able to provide recommendations for fleet movements. Where it becomes challenging in the Pacific AOR is you're usually dealing with ships that are at sea. So you have to be not only thinking about what's the easiest place to move this ship, but what's the best place to move this ship to where they're going to be able to meet their follow-on requirements. So it's not necessarily your standard track, your optimum track ship routing problem set, because you're not just thinking about getting them safe to safety, but you're thinking about doing it in such a way that they can be back on task as quickly as possible.
Commander Troy Kimmel here, and question regard to a program we had last week when we had our National Weather Service folks on from Guam and visiting with us about the latest tropical cyclone out there. I know there's a pretty good U.S. Navy presence there on the south end of the island in Guam. And what are you hearing from out there? The damage it impacted more toward Anderson, which is on the north end of the island, but the effect was on the south end as well. And I've got to imagine there's a pretty good effect there on the Navy presence on the south end.
Okay, that's true, and we used to have a very large presence of meteorology and oceanography on Guam years ago, but just budgets and shrinking of our force, we've consolidated that capability at the Joint Typhoon Warning Center. So we don't have a meteorologist. We have the Air Force meteorologists out at Anderson Air Force, but nobody else from our community on Guam normally. However, right now, speaking to the question that you just brought up, we actually have 2 teams on station that are doing hydrographic survey work in order to make sure that harbor, Opera Harbor, is safe for navigation. So while we may not be out there physically present doing meteorology, we are out there right now doing physical oceanography to make sure that we can get folks in and give them safe navigation conditions.
Thank you, sir.
Commander, you're there at Stennis, and it seems to be increasingly important from what I hear and what I read. Is that becoming a more important center over time, or is it sort of steady state?
That's a difficult question to ask or answer. From a perspective of importance, it's the headquarters of our community. So the admiral resides at Stennis, and so does his staff. That's of which I'm a part. We also have the Naval Oceanographic Office, and some of the partnerships that we've developed down here are really quite exciting. The University of Southern Mississippi is on Stennis Space Center. Mississippi State University is on Stennis Space Center. We have Special Boat Team 22. We have an international special boat team training facility. We have the Naval Oceanographic Operations Command, the Naval Oceanography Mine Warfare Center. So I would say that it's not a declining place of importance. I would say that we're not growing as rapidly as we were. Some of the growth that is spawning out of the Stennis Space Center relationships is on the Gulf Coast, as we're standing up 2 new oceanography buildings down in Gulfport. And both of those oceanography buildings are going to be targeted at both at NOAA, Navy, and civilian industry. So we're really excited about that opportunity. In fact, this year we have we have Oceans 2023 down in Gulfport, and part of that will be our Keystone event at the new building, the new Southern Miss building that's opening up right on the water in the main deep water port. And we'll have 20 or so different presentations down there with sailors talking about the things that they've done all over the world with naval oceanography, unclassified world. So it'll be worth going to see if you happen to make it down for Oceans 2023.
Yeah, when is that going to be, Commander?
Bobby, is it in September? Bobby will have the dates off the top of his head.
Hey, everyone. Yeah, it's the 3rd week of September in Biloxi at the convention center here.
Well, hopefully no hurricanes come along to mess with that, because you're in a pretty vulnerable location down there. I guess the facility's fairly hardened, I would imagine, given the history of hurricanes on the Mississippi Gulf Coast.
Yes, sir. There's a nice nice little breezeway underneath it up to about 26 feet. But you had to say it, didn't you?
Yeah, Bill, come on, man.
Let's don't jinx
Party
ourselves
pooper.
here. So talk about the importance of celestial navigation still. That seems so ancient history now, but it's still an important part of the process, isn't it?
Well, as you probably know, it fell out of favor for a little while. They stopped teaching it for a little while, and now it's become central again, which is really exciting for us. That just simply because it's reinvigorated a relationship with the observatory that had turned very much computer based. So that's kind of exciting. But the idea is the global positioning system isn't secure. So when you're at risk for your primary navigation schema, you have to go back to, it reminds me of the book Longitude. We don't want to go back that far, but it does take you back to what tools can you use that aren't affected by electronics. And your navigation, your celestial charts and your ability to utilize a sextant are going to be the things that are available when GPS is not.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, because we've all become so GPS dependent, even in the civilian world, and it obviously was a product that came out of the military. But I guess it is extremely in this era of space warfare, it could be very vulnerable if we ever come to that. Hopefully, we won't.
Yeah,
but yeah, that's interesting.
The other piece of it that I think we sort of lose track of is that GPS is where you get your time. We actually provide that time to the GPS in order for it to be communicated globally. When I say we, that's the Naval Observatory. So it's a multi-part problem set there.
Now, is that clock at the Naval Observatory still the same thing as the Defense Master Clock, or is that a totally different thing?
Nope, it's the same thing. It's just I would say that, how's a good way to say this? We've evolved with technology over time, and now you have what we refer to as a ensemble of clocks. Multiple rubidium fountains. The calcium laser is coming on that I was talking about, and by doing this, you basically drive down your problem set to the point of precision that almost doesn't make sense when you start talking in picoseconds. What are we at? 18 decimal places now of a second. So we've gotten better at it than we were in the past.
Yeah, I think the crew here is picking up on that as a potential show title there, Ensemble of Clocks, because it's apparently pervasive everywhere. Now, I always love getting into the history, and we mentioned Halsey and we mentioned D-Day, but you seem to have some other battles that have been affected by weather over time. I'd be curious to see what's like your top 2 or 3 over the history of the world that where weather affected a military battle.
Well, if you work your way across the Pacific and you think about Iwo Jima, and that, while not necessarily a heavy weather influence, it is an oceanography problem that we've gotten better at over the years. I'm drawing a blank on names. Must be getting late in the day here. If you want to go recent, very recent, just in the desert, if you will, some of the things that we've had to deal with were just thunderstorms across the mountain, and understanding that limits your ability to put aircraft into a given region because they can't fly through the thunderstorms. Sandstorms affecting the ability of a ship to pull into port, and looking at the timing of when there's going to be a break. So there are very recent examples of where significant decisions were made with a forecaster standing on the bridge of a ship, convincing the commanding officer to give me 30 more minutes, and I'm telling you the visibility is going to increase and we're going to be able to execute this mission.
Wow.
So there's no, I think Admiral Kilby described it at one point as the naval meteorology and oceanography helps the Navy maneuver in the gray space. So it's that where we give an advantage is that our folks have a very solid understanding of the environment, and they're able to map that to operational risk. So our folks are influencing those very tactical things that I just talked about, all the way out to where do we put our strategic assets such that they're the least vulnerable and the most effective. And that problem set from a whole of warfare kind of goes all the way back to Sun Tzu saying, know your terrain. The battle space, our responsibility is the medium. So the ocean, the atmosphere, and space, and how it behaves and the effects it delivers on our ability to deliver combat operations and our adversaries' ability to deliver. So while none of that is specific, it does give you an idea of where our head is at when we're trying to decide where to spend money, if you will, or where to invest in educational opportunities. We send 2 people a year to PhDs for meteorology and oceanography. 1 for meteorology, 1 for oceanography, and that's it. So when those folks get ready to select what it is that they want to study, it matters to us what their topic is going to be and how it's going to deliver on improving not only the state of the science, but the state of our ability to utilize that knowledge in affecting warfare.
You know,
James
Bill,
A., did you want to jump in real quick?
yeah, I had a friend who's a late friend now, but when he was in the Air Force, he flew KC-135s, and he was the commander when Shemya was still an active base, which is way out on the Aleutians. And needless to say, they had horrendous weather nearly all the time. And it was a giant issue for them because their divert base was Elmendorf. So they had to go all the way back over to, I guess it's Fairbanks, I think is the air base. So it's a 3-hour flight. So they had to know whether to start that diversion really soon. And that he said he leaned a lot on those meteorologists and made them feel really uncomfortable a lot of times. But he said they did great even then.
Yeah, there are some places where this forecast problem is just extremely hard. When we see it, you know, one of my formative experiences was on board the USS Kearsarge in the Ionian Sea. It was one of those just lucky incidents. I was going up to talk to the signalman and noticed that the handrails on the ship were saturated. I thought, oh no, this can't be good. And of course, run back down and look at the trend in the Dew Point Depression and immediately notified our primary flight control, hey, we've got a potential for fog. And within a very short period of time, we wound up, it looked like tendrils of smoke going across the flight deck. And then you just saw we got fogged in, just coming up off the water, fogged in. And, you know, we had 1 aircraft in the air that we had to talk in and put them down on the flight deck, which is a scary situation. And much like what you just described, when I say a formative experience, my conversation with that particular naval aviator when I was a young E5 was one of those formative experiences in life. And yeah, I appreciated everything that he had to say, and in particular when he was talking about his wife and kids. But it is a very hard job, especially when you talk about something like fog, which is such a small part of the atmosphere. Fairbanks, wow, that a whole area up there is hard to forecast for.
North Pole, Alaska, baby. Woof.
Talk about the challenges of climate change, Commander, and how the Navy's approaching that.
The biggest challenge that it introduces to us, I'll talk about naval meteorology and oceanography here, is that your 30-year climate record that you typically go to for climatology isn't as useful as you might like. Some of the initiatives that we've pushed have been smart climatology, targeted climatology. We've really put a heavy emphasis on reanalysis data sets for the last 10 years in order to be able to do a more detailed look at our if somebody says, what's the cloud cover going to be off of Oregon in November? Instead of going back 30 years and pulling averages, what we're doing now is looking at oscillations and where we are in the oscillation in order to eliminate climatology contributors that may not be applicable. So like this year, you were talking about the transition to El Nino. We would look at where we are in the transition season and pick out particular Junes that are similar to this June, and then go through that reanalysis data set in order to drive down our problem to give a more accurate answer that takes into consideration how the climate is changing. So that's one area. The water level changes that are predicted are disconcerting. We're not seeing it right now, but it's obviously something that we pay attention to as oceanographers and hydrographers. Some of our allies are obviously concerned about it. You get out into island nations like the Maldives, where your highest elevation is the top of somebody's house, but typically land-wise, you're maybe 5 to 6 feet above water level. So they're constantly bringing sand out of the ocean and back up onto their islands just as a reclamation problem set. So those are some of them. The other ones are the extreme weather events that we're really paying attention to. We're trying to look at some of the statistical models that have been produced over the last 5 to 10 years, where they're taking the historical radar data and producing short-term statistical forecasts using that radar data to augment our normal forecasting system. Some of those more recent, I shouldn't say discoveries, but advances in technology are things that we're trying to capitalize on in order to get ahead of these more severe problem sets that we're dealing with.
And Commander, our younger people love to hear career advice. So if someone is contemplating the Navy as a place to jump off with their meteorological career, what advice would you have for them?
Go all in. I came in with no degree and no, I was excited about meteorology just because who wouldn't be? But I now have 3 master's degrees and a PhD, and the Navy took me through all of that along the way. So there's incredible opportunity if you just work hard and be a student. A lifelong learner is an important trait to have.
Yeah, and if I could just jump in, we have the military component, which makes up 1,600 folks to include our reservists. In addition, we have 1,300 civilians that do a lot of great work around the world. And Commander Pierman, if you could talk a little bit about that career, those types of careers that our folks, that civilians could also join. So you could join in uniform like Commander Pierman and I are, or you could come in wearing what you gentlemen are wearing and ladies on the screen here.
Okay, so now I'm going to talk about one of my favorite topics. Our civilian workforce is nothing short of amazing. We have the opportunities that we have range from information technicians, engineers, hydrographers, oceanographers, bioluminescence specialists. I already talked about the space folks. I work with a engineer who's been doing this for 30 years. My deputy, she's amazing. I have a retired Air Force major who's one of our meteorologist specialists. Right next to him, his coworker is a PhD in oceanography who's came into the Navy as a civilian, and the Navy paid for her to go to school and get her PhD. And now we have her working on the senior staff. We have numerical modelers out in Fleet Numerical, forecasters in San Diego and Norfolk, all the way out to Yokosuka, Japan. There's no limit to the opportunity to see the world, or the opportunity to actually take your science and apply it to Navy warfare. I'm talking heavy on the science right now, but we also have administrators. We have a number of Obviously, you have to pay for things. So we have our accountants and we have our contract specialists. So there's a lot of civilian opportunity available, really for any skill set that the civilian sector has.
Hey, Commander. And by the way, let me just first off say that we're both in the same club, the Hair Club for Men. So we're good-looking guys here. Let's just cut through it here and let's talk about the Atlantic hurricane season. Give us your thoughts. Here we are, mid-June. We're coming up on July. Before you know it, August is going to be here, September. What are your thoughts on the Atlantic Basin this year?
Well, the first one that we were looking at in the Gulf of Mexico went south instead of north. So I'm not entirely sure that this is going to be a normal season. In the conversations that we've had, I'll rely on Dave Roberts because this is really his bread and butter. His assessment is we're going to have a above average season, average to above average season. The things the unknowns that we've been talking about are we're not sure how much dust we're going to have suppressing convection this year. The effect of El Nino and how fast we wind up seeing that effect is a little uncertain right now. So the question, I guess, really for all of us is we haven't had we've had active tropical cyclone years, but we haven't had the large number of major hurricanes to redistribute energy that we would expect to see in the Atlantic Basin. So do we have the energy concentration necessary to offset some of those smaller things that I was just talking about? I think we do. It's just going to be a question of, when and where.
Yeah, it's an interesting battle also between those anomalously warm SSTs and El Nino and shear, but we'll see. It's one of the things. All it takes is one. We all know that. And I don't know if I'm the biggest fan of these seasonal outlooks or not. I was going to ask too, if you've studied history, Camille, 1969, you probably heard stories. How did that affect operations in the base down there?
Well, I really, I don't know. I know that
okay. I thought you've heard some good stories hanging around there.
Yeah, our folks weren't down here yet. We moved down after Camille.
Okay.
So from a perspective of how did it affect New Orleans, I'm not sure. I know how Katrina affected it because I was part of that, but I'm not sure about Camille.
Yeah, it was. Bill, you remember Camille. I'm trying to look at the panelists here. Not many of us are old enough to remember Camille. I was 13. Bill, how old were you?
I was 7. And so, I remember that Sunday morning clearly, the frantic news broadcasts and things, that were coming in from the coast. And, so it was more of a fear factor for me. I was trying to remember back. This is, of course, this week coming up is the anniversary of Agnes from 1972, which I did track extensively. Probably the first hurricane I had that opportunity to do as it came up through the Gulf of Mexico. And that was mainly because of that experience with Camille and a hurricane named Edith, James. I don't know if you remember it, from 1971 that came into the Texas coast and shot back across. And I think we got about 2 inches of rain here in Birmingham and some 30-mile-per-hour wind gusts. But by that time I was hooked. Hurricanes were, the thing I was really interested in.
Commander, a couple more quick questions here, and we'll let you guys go. I know it's been a rough night on the Mississippi coast. I've been watching the radar while we're doing the show. Obviously, conditions have improved there, but I know that it was a rough ride. What's the most challenging part of your job, the most difficult part?
The most difficult part of the job is trying to quantify new science and the effect that it's going to have on decision superiority in such a way that is concise and understandable to folks that actually care enough to put money towards it, if you will. We've recently been working heavy on understanding and developing numerical models for high altitude, up to 300, 500 kilometers. So you're looking at thermospheric problems where you're looking at ionospheric problems, where you're getting into, where you're dealing with Boltzmann equations on top of the Navier-Stokes equations, and you're really dealing with a scientifically hard problem. And oftentimes, what the commander wants to hear is, "What's the answer?" And when you're in this R&D phase and you're so close to transitioning to operations, shifting your dialogue from the heavy science to why do I care is probably the hardest part. Earlier when I was talking about the Naval Observatory, trying to explain to folks why they care about interferometric measurements is, that it's non-trivial. So I would say it's that translating a very complex science into a red, yellow, or green go, no go decision is the hardest part of what we do.
James Adelite, you might mention what you just typed in the chat, because what you wrote is so true here.
Yeah, I just said the best information is completely useless if it's not communicated effectively or understood by the recipient. Now, the commander can't say he's dumbing down the information, but I say that all the time dealing with my boss.
So the other piece of it that you bring up right there is you said that getting the information in a way that's understood. I like what you did, what you typed. I see it now. I see how to scroll now. But it's part of that for us is being in the right place at the right time. One of our other major challenges, as you mentioned earlier, is having these sailors on the right ship at the right time in the right place in order to make a recommendation on the environment that's changing and what that future is going to look like for purposes of whatever mission they're executing. So I would say that's the other part of the problem is when you have a finite asset like people, we call them high density or high demand, low density assets. Putting them in the most optimal place for them to affect decisions is challenging. Our Maritime Operations Center has to deal with that problem every day. If you have 10 people and you get 25 asks, it's where will these people be the most effective that they have to weigh.
So what's your biggest fear in terms of your position? What could go wrong? In the weather business, we all know what could go wrong. A busted forecast. In some are high impact and they're bad. What's it like on your end?
So in my particular job, which is requirements and capabilities, if I had to define a fear, it would be not delivering the sailors, the aerographers' mates, the tools that they're going to need in 3 to 5 years to do their job in a way that is more advanced and more effective than our adversaries.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, Bobby, so if anybody wants to get in touch with either one of you or find out more about the operations, what's the best way of doing that? Give us a plug for websites or social media accounts, whatever you got. Go.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for the time, guys. I greatly appreciate this. We're on all the social accounts, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. We're very active on those platforms. We post multiple times a day. We also have a website, CNMOC. That's cnmoc.usff.navy.mil. I can put that in the chat. But that website can take you to all the different commands that Commander Pierman was talking about, where a lot of the products that our sailors and civilians work on a daily basis get published and are utilized by civilian entities, industry, and other, obviously, DoD interagencies. The other thing I'd mention, just to kind of sum it up, we have a phrase that we use a lot. It's called, "It starts with us." And as anyone who works in weather, a lot of folks start their day looking at what the weather is going to be like so they can plan their day. That's no different than for the Navy and for the military in general. So before a plane takes off, before a ship sets sail, and before even a submarine dives below the waves, they're looking at us and asking us, is it safe? Can we go there? Can we execute the mission? And then last piece, just jumping really quick back, I got a note from a friend of mine who's actually in Guam, who's watching this right now. She said to ask everyone there, just keep the folks in Guam in your thoughts and prayers as they're still working through the recovery efforts there. A lot of our sailors and the other military members in the community there have their families there, and they're working together to get that place back up and running 100%. As Commander Pearman talked about, we have the USNS Henson and their team that are clearing the waterways so that ships can safely go in and out, getting the relief in there that's necessary.
Awesome. Well, gentlemen, thanks to both of you for your service. We'll let you go cut down some trees. I know it's been a chaotic night on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, but again, thanks so much for your time, and we certainly appreciate it. And again, thanks to both of you men for your service. Thank you for what you've done for our country. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. At this time, we're going to take a break. For Tony Rice, Jen's This Week in Tornado History. We're going to come back with a little email, weather roundup, picks of the week, and more as WeatherBrains rolls along.
Looking beyond the atmosphere, here's Tony Rice with your astronomy outlook.
A supernova appeared in the night sky recently. It's first spotted in mid-May by amateur astronomer Koichi Itagaki. This supernova, named SN 2023 IXF, is the closest one that we've seen in about 5 years, but it's still 21 million light years away. To look at this another way, for you geology types, this was the early Miocene era, when the African and European continents were still running into each other. For you biology types, we're still about 19 or so million years away from the earliest known humans. This star exploded 21 million years ago, and we're just seeing it now. It's in the beautiful Pinwheel Galaxy, named for its spiral arms filled with about 1 trillion stars and nebulae, where those stars begin their lives. But supernovas, they occur at the end of a star's life. And this is a type 2 supernova, which means it's the result of a very violent, very rapid collapse of a star dozens of times larger than our own sun. As it continues to collapse and continues to cool, it's either going to become a neutron star or maybe a black hole. Just don't expect to see this with the naked eye. While the Itagaki-san is technically an amateur astronomer, he's CEO of his family's snack food company by day, and supernova hunter by night from his home observatory in the mountains outside of Yamagata, Japan, he's also credited with dozens of discoveries, including 3 minor planets, and has co-authored hundreds of papers on supernovae. SN 2023 IXF has been observed between magnitude 11 and 16, which is out of the reach for most backyard telescopes, except Itagaki-san's. That's your astronomy outlook. Follow me at RTP Hokie for more spacey stuff like this.
This week in tornado history, it looked like we were driving into a dump site or a burned out slum, or what I would imagine a bombed out city would have looked like after World War II. These are the words of Steve Ullman. He was 22 and a senior member of the Mankato Civil Air Patrol Squadron when an F-5 hit Tracy, Minnesota on June 13, 1968. He was dispatched to Tracy on a search and rescue mission. 11 tornadoes were confirmed on June 13, 1968. 5 were in the state of Minnesota, all rated F0 but 1. This devastating tornado struck just after 7 p.m. Central Time. It traveled close to 13 miles, and there were 9 fatalities. The exact number of injuries is not clear, but there were at least 125. Over 110 homes had major damage, 13 farms and 10 businesses were destroyed. Per the Minneapolis Star on June 14, 1968, the force of this tornado lifted a boxcar from the tracks and moved it 1.5 blocks into a residential section. Read more about this event and over 550 more at tornadotalk.com.
Okie dokie. Let's see if we've got some email to read in the inbox this week.
All righty, we do have a couple of emails to pass your way. Catherine Ebeling sent us a link to the Camp Cook's Guide to Weather. It's with the very famous Kent Rollins, who's a cowboy and does a lot of cooking shows, and it's a great link. So I'm actually going to make that my pick of the week number 2, so everybody can watch that video. So thanks for sending that in. We also got an email from Shane Wallace. Neil's not here, but we're going to try to tackle a little bit of a model question here. Are there any seasonal models that give a reasonable explanation of what can be expected from the weather to be able to make decisions for farming purposes? And he sent a little clips from the Climate Prediction Center But because NOAA has what we attach, but don't know if it's any good or not. Now, the Climate Prediction Center is a great site, but I understand that you're trying to make some decisions. Are there any other sites that anybody could recommend for farming? Drought monitor. I mean, but I don't know if that's not going to give you an outlook, though. Any thoughts? All right.
Not unless, Jen, you're talking about the seasonal outlooks, from CPC or something like that, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what he attached in there. I think that's probably one of your best bets is to look at something like that, so you can kind of get just a gist of what the season's looking.
But use with caution. Use with caution.
Yeah.
And I think so many times we're guilty of not expressing uncertainty in something like that. People sometimes ask the Weather Enterprise to do things that we just don't do very well. And the skill set in a seasonal forecast is limited. There is some, I understand that. There really is. It's not what I do. It's all I can do to figure out the weather 5 days in advance, much less a season in advance. But yeah, I think the CPC outlooks would be a good starting place, but use with caution.
Yes, I would agree. All right, we've got this email in this evening from Thomas Hobson. He had a quick personal story. This was back in May. He was on Dauphin Island and let's see, I'm going to try to get through this quickly as I can. He saw the winds picked up a little bit. I tried to get everything secured. I went to VHF radio, NOAA broadcast. There was no info. Checked the ABC 3340 weather app and didn't just to see if there was an outflow, and didn't see anything. And then he launched Wind Finder and saw a small craft advisory had been issued for a gust front. And so he wanted to kind of plug that Wind Finder app as something that was very good at predicting the direction and speed of the wind in the Mobile Bay area, and a great pick of the week for somebody as well. So we're going to go ahead and just throw it out there for folks, as we're always getting emails on what are some different apps that we could use for stuff like that. On a side note, Bill and I may have been at Huffman High School at the same time. So that's interesting. My dad had a little gas station down the street. So Bill, I don't know if you know who this person is or not.
Oh my goodness. Hang on a second.
Yeah. Thomas Hobson. So think about that. And then
it'll be interesting to see what year he was in. I was in the class of 1980.
Okay.
So I just was, I get those classmates emails, that come and say, do you know this person? And of course, all these people, from your graduating class. And it's a very addictive way to kind of suck you in. Jen, going back to the email about the modeling, I sometimes look at the European extended, out for 45 days. This is going to be a good test of it right here. It's predicting about 4 to 5 inches above normal rainfall for us in Alabama through the middle of July. So we'll have to kind of keep a close eye on that. I guess we're going to get a good head start on that this week with all the rain we're going to have here in Alabama over the next 4 to 5 days.
Yeah, that's great. To button up Thomas's note here, keep up the great work, guys. I've been tuning in regular since I accidentally caught Neil Jacobs on episode 789. Why does he not have a bio on the webpage? And I checked and he doesn't. So we need to get that fixed because he is part of the show. And tell him he is pretty high up there on my list of guys I'd like to have a beer with. I think that he's on many of our lists because he's got so many great stories, and I'm shocked every time he speaks. So whatever he's gotten himself into next. Thank you all for the emails. We appreciate it. We appreciate your support. We appreciate you listening and watching us every single week. Make sure you sign up for that newsletter too, just so you can get a little bit more from your brainy friends here. And you can email us at email@weatherbrains.com. Back to you, James Spann.
When the weather ball is red, warmer weather is ahead. When the weather ball is white, colder weather is in sight. When the weather ball is green, no change in the weather is foreseen. When colors blink by night or day, precipitation's on the way.
Troy, how's that severe storm west of you doing?
It to me looks like on radar it's weakening a little bit, but one thing that the New Braunfels Austin San Antonio office has talked about is it gets close to their CWA, and they just got through issuing a warning northwest of Llano. It's a very small severe thunderstorm warning northwest of Llano. Is it the radar may have been kind of underestimating some of the hail sizes. Earlier, I noticed up around Dual, Texas, 4-inch diameter hail. That was reported by a spotter. And then in Brady, which is in the path of the system that's moved through, I see 2.5-inch. So what is that? Tennis ball size, about getting about that size. So this thing may be producing a little more than the radar is showing you, but I think that it moves southeastward. Storm Prediction Center has said this, and Angelo has talked about it. Weather Service in Austin, San Antonio has as well. Is we have a pretty good inversion in place, especially with the sun going down now. It's getting away from the forcing a little bit. I would expect that storm to begin to decrease a little bit here in the next little bit, but still a respectable thunderstorm. Oh, had to show this to you, and I don't know how I'm going to do this, but we're going to do it the old-fashioned way. So John Marshall is a friend of mine out in Air Ops, out at Austin Bergstrom International Airport. And keep in mind, everybody, that the airport is about 110 miles from Brady, Texas, or this thunderstorm. And I want to show you a look from Bergstrom Airport out toward Brady here a little while ago, a picture they took at Air Ops. And I'm hoping that'll come in there.
Ooh, nice.
Very impressive CB. And this was taken by John Marshall and the folks at Air Ops, Austin Bergstrom International Airport, 110 miles away from the Brady storm here in the last half hour or so. So a rather impressive picture from Austin. And a pretty impressive storm up there. Looks like it may be strengthening a little bit now in the last couple of minutes.
And, I do weather down in the valley, and I'm forecasting 107 for McAllen Thursday. So it's getting a little toasty down there. And look, it's the valley. It gets hot, triple digit heat. That's nothing new for them, but 'tis the season for that. So let's work our way north. Kim, what's happening in Oklahoma this week?
A little bit more of this. I mean, Rick can tell me if I'm wrong, but it seems that we are kind of hanging with this pattern a bit, and we get to enjoy more of the, well, I guess enjoy is subjective. Rick informed me there was actually some pretty significant hail just outside of Norman this morning. But we have stormy days that could bring us a little bit of rain, and that goes on through the week. It's pretty mild, all things considered, right, Rick?
Yeah, I mean, Oklahoma City only got to 68 today, and that, of course, set a new cold record high. Got some good rain, close to an inch here. Did get some really unusually severe storms early this morning. I was awakened about 4:45 here at home with some super loud thunder and just a barrage of pea to, we're not supposed to say marble size hail, whatever's a little bit bigger than a pea. Just covering the ground. The gutters were clogged. We still had hail. There's still hail right outside my office window here from this morning. So, and then bigger storms, kind of supercellular more type storms down in southwest Oklahoma, down just northeast of Lawton, produced nearly baseball size hail. And those storms persisted for several hours. Things have quieted down now, but yeah, we've been enjoying this pattern. I mean, it's been plenty of rain. Everything is green, but it looks like that's about to come to an end, and reality's going to slap us in the face later on with mid 90s in the forecast over the next week or so. So it has to happen sooner or later.
Yeah. But let me get to, you said that the high was 68 today.
Correct.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow. Record low high. Love that. 12th of June. That's slightly cool. James A., what was your high today?
76. And I think Rick's high was a midnight high too, if I'm not mistaken. So it's even ruder. He was even cooler.
Probably so. Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. The weather ball here is turning mighty red.
Red.
Yeah. I mean, this ridge that is forecast to build over us has been, I guess delayed a little bit. It doesn't look quite as strong as it did, but we'll see. It's June and it happens every year about this time.
It does. And July and August are coming. So Jen, will you ever see 80 where you are this summer?
We had some hot weather last week, but the future is not calling for much in terms of any warm ups. We actually stay below average for a bit, and our high was 68 today in Ohio, or more where I'm at in West Central Ohio. So it was pretty cool. We were talking earlier about the tornado season, and up in this area, it's been very quiet for the past couple of months, and we had some active periods in end of March and early April. But we actually had, I was looking at the records from yesterday, what happened, we had actually 2 confirmed tornadoes in West Central Ohio, and they were both EF0s. One hit Tip City. Tip City is hit, I'm telling you, almost every year with some kind of a weak tornado. There's like a corridor in West Central Ohio, Cincinnati, Dayton, up toward Wapakoneta, Salina, and west out toward Van Wert. It's very active there. And so we had some nasty cells that came in yesterday, and there's a tornado warning not far from me, but it just brought us some pretty heavy rain. So, but overall, with this cooler pattern, we've really not seen too much in the way of a lot of severe weather. And I'm glad to see the pattern changing, where we are getting more rainy days than what we were dealing with earlier.
Awesome. All right. Well, that's the deal. The tropics are quiet. So let's kind of shift over to picks of the week. My pick, it is a little light. I love lightning video as long as I'm not around it. And I'm afraid of one thing when it comes to weather: lightning. That's it. And it terrifies me. But so I like to watch it from somebody else's camera in another place. But we had some pretty hefty storms that came through here last night, and I got, with the Ring cameras and the security cameras, you get some pretty cool lightning shots. So that'll be my pick of the week. And guess who I'm going to dinner with tomorrow night? Spend some time with the director of the National Weather Service, our friend Ken Graham. Yeah, it's going to be good to see. Yeah, we're going to spend a little bit of time together, which is a good thing. But all right, so let's go to Rick Smith. Rick, what you got for us? Your pick of the week this week?
Well, with summer coming eventually, I mean, it has to, at least for a little while. My pick of the week is just the Weather Service heat safety page. All kinds of good information there. This time of year, and always, we need to think about checking the back seat and things like that. And just a lot of really good new infographics and things that you can share. Anybody can share this information on social media. Lots of good resources there to talk about heat as we get into that time of year.
Very good. 'Tis the season. James Adelot, what's your pick of the week?
My pick of the week is from Roger Edwards, who is a Storm Prediction Center meteorologist and was my TA in Synoptic Lab at the University of Oklahoma way back in the day. And he's out chasing in Texas with a PhD storm chasing friend of his from Poland, who I won't even attempt his name, but they were northwest of Tulia, Texas. And they have a picture of a supercell in the golden hour sunset lighting. And his friend is squatting in front of a giant sinkhole that's off the road. And they had no idea how deep it was. They couldn't see the bottom of it. And yeah, Maddish. That's it. Maddish. And no thanks. I'm not as much as I hate lightning, I think sinkholes kind of freak me out a little bit more. So yeah, it's never seen supercells in sinkholes. In one
that thing was like a bottomless pit. That thing looked terrifying.
It's that Sarlacc pit from Return of the Jedi or whatever that
was. All right, Troy Kimmel, give us a good pick of the week. Go.
Well, most people that listen or watch us are familiar with some of the mesoscale precipitation discussions that are issued by the Weather Prediction Center. And this is something I just kind of stumbled across. Most people are familiar with the fact we now have the National Weather Center now down in Tuscaloosa in Alabama. And they have started issuing a text product called an Area Hydrologic Discussion. It's an experimental product. But what I've done through our links is provided you the National Water Center site and the link to these graphic products. In addition to our friend Daryl Hertzman up at the Iowa Environmental Mesonet, these text bulletins, if you're on WeatherWire, NOAA WeatherWire, they're being transmitted out, even though they're experimental, and you can get them. So I put the pill headers. I've given you some a couple of the links to sites. These are sort of familiar or sort of similar in a way to the mesoscale precipitation discussions, even though they seem to be a little more reserved for river and stream flooding and not as much for flash flooding. So just something I stumbled across in the last couple of days, and I thought you might be interested.
There's some good folks down there at that facility. I've been there several times, and there's some good stuff coming in the future, and that is a great pick of the week. All right,
Yeah.
Kim, give us a good pick. Go.
I'm highlighting one of my favorite weather service folk singers, John Fawcett. And I had the opportunity to bring up his music at a workshop this past week, the Unidata workshop held by UCAR. And none of these young people know who this guy is or celebrate his collection. So I had them do an exercise that was really heady and conceptual about redesigning the weather service with an equity framework. And so I decided, you know what? While they work on this, I'm going to give them some lighthearted joy in the background. And there were several people who went on and bought his CD. They loved it so much. So I have shared some of his music with all of you.
Outstanding. Love it. All right, Jen, your turn. Go.
All right, we have a brand new summary from a brand new writer, and it just came out last week for the 5-year anniversary, June 6, 2018, the Laramie, Wyoming EF3, highly photogenic, amazing storm and tornado. And our writer, William Dunn, lives in Wyoming and actually saw this cell from many, many miles away, but he wrote his story and told the whole story about the track. We have some amazing photos and videos that have been able to be included into the summary as well. So enjoy that. It was a great write-up about this very photogenic, momentous event.
Excellent. And again, all these links will be up on weatherbrains.com. Bill Murray, your turn.
Yeah, James, the really cool website the Weather Service put up about, I guess, 10 years ago, the Enhanced Data Display, the EDD, they're deprecating that and they're taking comments on that. So my pick of the week is going to be making sure that the individuals in NOAA who are responsible for that get the feedback, not only about deprecating that site, but the replacement site. That's really two of them that are effective. And I've been playing around with that. So that's my pick of the week, James. My other picks of the week are some great shows coming up. We'll talk Thursday night with Randy Cervini from, I think, University of Arizona, right, Kim, or anybody? I think that's where he is. About the history of the WMO. I'm curious about that. Tim Bryce, friend of the podcast, is going to join us on the 26th with a nice panel talking about the Southern Region National Weather Service's Women's Conference. That's going to be a lot of fun. And I know things have been a little better recently, but the Great Salt Lake is in tremendous danger. America's Dead Sea. And we're going to have Kevin Perry from the University of Utah on Wednesday, July 5th. That show will be a little out of sync with our normal pattern because of the holiday. And then Kevin Laws has arranged on the 10th, that Monday night, to have Sharon Reed, a very courageous lady who was running a daycare in downtown Selma, Alabama, when a major tornado hit there this spring. And she is credited with probably saving dozens of children's lives because of her fast action. So it was definitely an afternoon when knowing the safe place meant everything. And Sharon Reed will join us. I've got 3 shows I'm working on between the 17th and the end of the month that will be spectacular in their own right. So if all of those pan out, we're going to have a really good time all the way through the end of July, talking to some amazing people about weather here on WeatherBrains. And James Spann, after all these years, you think we'd run out of people, but we tend to keep coming up with them somehow.
We're just getting started here. We're just getting started. So that's awesome. Great guest coming up. And again, on the logistical side, again, this show we're recording on Monday, June the 12th. We're going to have a Thursday night special this week, which will be next Monday night's show. That'll be the podcast. So again, we're going to record on Thursday night, June 15th at 7:00 Central. We will not be doing a live show next week, the week of the 19th. That's the vacation week. We'll be back on the Monday schedule on the 26th of June. I played the wrong deal. I've never hit the wrong button at the end of the show. I played the weather ball again. I mean, how did that happen? I mean, wow. Hey, but listen, we got to wrap this one up. So for those that are new here, if you're a noob, we're typically on the air every Monday night at 8:00 Eastern, 7:00 Central. And some people watch live on YouTube, youtube.com/weatherbrains. But we know that most of you listen to this show. And again, our show we're doing Thursday night will be, sent out to the world as a podcast Monday night of next week. However you consume the show, thanks. And if you want to get in touch with us, the email address, it's easy. Email at weatherbrains.com. So on behalf of the entire WeatherBrains crew, I'm James Spann. Thanks for listening. Have a great week and God bless. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. See you Thursday.
Thank y'all.
Have a great week.
show.
See y'all Thursday.